Hello everybody. Today I'd like to talk about floodplain succession, floodplain restoration, and how the beaver can really transform those really degraded floodplains. So here we are, we're in the obviously the flooded portion of a floodplain, and bank full discharge right now. So we had a nice rainstorm 24 hours ago. And you can see the river has back flooded into that field. And we're standing about 40 meters away from the channel. It's an 8-meter stream. We're about 40 meters away, maybe 25. But it's all saturated fully with water. And that's because there's a beaver dam downstream that has, lifted up the bottom of this brook so that the flow is now back flooding into the floodplain when it once didn't. And this is such a beneficial process because it takes the energy of really high flow events out of the channel. So there's a lot less scouring going on. And I've reviewed aerial footage from this particular site from the 1970s. And you see the big trees in the background, those were the streamside vegetation along the brook in about 1974. And more or less there was a single line of mature trees on both sides of the brook. And that was basically an old channel that had been dredged by the farmers in order to dry more of this floodplain into suitable agricultural land. And as some of this land became fallow over the years and through the 1990s, there was periodic events, we could say, of beaver colonization in this brook. And usually what would happen is the beavers would establish for a year or two, they would become a nuisance, and then a trapper would be hired and they would be removed. And that probably took place for about 25 years. But the beavers were slowly working their way ahead, and the floodplain began to become more frequently saturated, and those periods of saturation were much longer. And that's when we started to see the development of these alders and choke cherries. And as these shrubs, herbaceous shrubs, develop and become mature, you can see now that they're promoting more beaver colonization. So what's happening in this section of stream is it's a self-sustaining process that the beavers have created, whereby the more they impact this floodplain, the greater the extent of the saturation of the soil, the more beneficial woody vegetation that the beavers require is going to grow. So it's really it's a type of floodplain forest management that they're doing. And the more they saturate this floodplain, the more they enlarge that floodplain, the more ground that's suitable for these type of shrubs becomes available. And then those shrubs, as they mature, can be incorporated into dam structures, beaver lodges, and also just the young shoots like these going to be excellent food for the beavers over the winter. And there's a number of benefits coming from all this that are affecting cold water fish like Atlantic salmon. Well, all of this backed up water is recharging the groundwater table, and so we're increasing the surface water to groundwater interchange. And now our downstream habitats are being more positively impacted by groundwater seepages. So as that water is percolating through those floodplain soils, it's actually moving across the entire floodplain underground, where the channel does a big loop around. And now we have springs that are just pouring out water. Even in the heart of our summer drought this year, there was still spring water going through there. And the spawning habitat within there, interestingly enough, isn't the best, but there is some. And that entire site was utilized 2 years in a row by Atlantic salmon. And there's some downstream and upstream spawning habitat that, at least to my eye, looked to be much higher quality. And the Atlantic salmon just swam right by them, and then they picked the sites with little lesser quality spawning material, but there was that groundwater influence. So you got to give credit to salmon and all these species. They really know things intuitively that we take a long time to figure out. So there's just a quick video on how beavers can promote ecological recovery and really transform our aquatic ecosystem.